Hello guys, it's Randall with Bitraged. So I'm going to do a video on Bitcoin, what we're looking at here, just to close out the week. I'm pretty much done for the day as far as trading. Not any setups I'm really looking to get into before the weekend. Nothing that's of great value. That said, there is some setups that should be aligning for next week, and I will try to do a market review for you guys on Monday. I will be gone Sunday, but I'll try and get that out to you on Monday after the market cools down a little bit. We basically have one more day to the month, which is Monday for the trading month, and that will close out our September. I hope you guys have been doing fantastic. It has been an amazing month. I know a lot of people have been saying it's a very corrective month. I don't really care because there's been a lot of potential and a lot of good solid trades. I'm planning on doing a breakdown of my trades in a video for you guys, showing you what I took, why I took it, and I also explaining because I've been backtesting a new rage entry, and we're going to be going over that a little bit maybe. So keep an eye out for that sometime the first week in October. Alright, so what am I looking for with Bitcoin? So obviously with Bitcoin, we've talked about this in the past. This is the impulsive phase. This is the corrective phase. But within this corrective phase, and we can look at this as either a triangle or a descending wedge. And I think a triangle fits better the way it broke out. It definitely would fit better. But either way, as you get to the end, you get to a breaking point where the market has to push one way or the other. It gets that friction point. And you can see those friction points here with these low momentum candles that are wicky. And even though it's descending in nature, you can see that the market is undecided. It tries to move down and it gets rejected. And it tries to move up and it makes no progress. And it's just kind of trying to figure out what it's going to do. And we're at the outer edge of this triangle, and then we end up dropping out. If we look at, this is what I'm looking at right now, and I've decided to remove, you can have the triangle on. It's a fulfilled pattern if we see it as that, and so for the future that gives us no benefit. So I'm looking to the future, I'm trying to forecast, I'm trying to understand where the market is headed, and for me to do that I want to see the most likely scenarios. So I'm looking at this as a descending channel, and if you take the parallel tool, the equal parallel tool, and you take the two tops here, it perfectly aligns with these two bottoms, and because of that I'm looking at this as a descending channel. It all fits right now. I'm looking at this as a third touch. It came close enough to me, and we have the trend line, the inner trend line. So what you could say is this forms a smaller triangle within a triangle, which you can look up the statistics on those. But I'm seeing that as a third touch, and I'm looking for this to either make a third touch or a bottom, which would be a double bottom from this area. What we are seeing on Bitcoin on the daily is a little bit of hesitation or the momentum dropping in the market. So we're getting little smaller candles and some rejection wicks. We've moved very aggressively from $10,000 down to 7,700 area. I think the low was 7,700 on Bitstamp. So we are slowing momentum, but that doesn't mean that we will stop. We could just start to form a correction at this point, or we could change and just trickle our way down instead of moving impulsively. But we're going to look at the lower time frames. Keep an eye on these two areas. If we continue to drop, these would be the two key areas to look at. And then this wick here, it aligns with previous structure, the 6,100 all the way down to 59, even 5,700. Those areas are pretty key and will be areas to look at if we get to that point. If we drop this down to the 4 hour, now it's interesting to me that you have patterns that repeat. So we have this pattern here, it moves up, it moves down, and then it forms this kind of nature and it drops. This moves up, it moves down, it forms that kind of nature, and then it ends up dropping out. It's not perfectly identical, but you can see the same elements. You can see that move up, that bigger top, and then a move off, and even this area here tries to mimic. So it's very close, and you can see this happening in Bitcoin, and often in Bitcoin, if you see a pattern that repeats, it generally will repeat the outcome. So we got the sell off here. This was a bigger pattern of this. We did get a bigger sell off from that. I don't think I mentioned this previously. I don't really think I wasn't looking at that, but I'm not really looking at Bitcoin. I'm not trading Bitcoin right now. I don't see it as a necessity because I'm trading Forex. I'm doing great with it, and that's all I need. So I'm not spending as much time focusing on crypto and Bitcoin, but I'm doing this for you guys. So that I find it interesting. What I also find interesting is where we are now, which I'm looking at this as a descending pattern, just to give us clarity. But what's interesting to me is you look at this and it kind of almost forms like a boot, like a high-heeled boot type pattern. What's interesting is this seems to be a repeat. We get this same movement up, that move out, it tries to move off, comes back, and then we get a little bit of ascending. And this is exactly what happened here. I'm not saying that it has to sell from here, but I'm saying that is a possibility to see this pattern fulfill this pattern. Now what's interesting is previously we saw a smaller pattern repeated larger. We're seeing a larger pattern repeated smaller, which could indicate the market is slowing down. It's getting towards exhaustion, and we might be seeing that move to the upside even if it is only temporary. If we get any kind of corrective movement or any kind of rejection from this ray line or from a third touch on this trend line, that would be the area to buy from if you get an entry. You know, if your criteria match. I would not personally be buying anything in the middle of a pattern. It just is too risky and it's not going to play out in the wrong one. You might get this one. Let's say it just jumps. You might get that one, and the next 20 you lose. It's not a good idea. If this moves kind of correctively to this area, it is possible for that to break up. And I know some people get eager to do that, and Tether might help it along. The probable would be a break to the downside because that is ascending at the end. And then to see a pattern like this break down and then bounce, that would make sense and fulfill both patterns. But those are things to look at. Just look at how this moves, how it interacts either on this end or this end of the trend line. And as we have this trend line in here, an intersection between the trend line and the ray line would be a good area. Any kind of rejection in that area would lend itself to a temporary, if not a more longer term buy. So that is what we're looking at here. The descending nature, if you look at this, the majority of this is descending, so it fits within a descending pattern, but it doesn't mean this has to move to the upside. And even if it does move to the upside, we could move to the upside and do that, and it just turns out it was a larger flag. And this can happen where a bigger corrective pattern moves. You get that attempt to push off to move up and it gets rejected. And to see where this candle is between 87 and 9,000, that would be an area that could be retested. So I know some people are wondering if we're in a downtrend, if we're in a bearish trend with Bitcoin. The answer is we are. We broke this low, we broke that area, and even ignoring this pattern, we broke that area very impulsively. So we are in a bearish trend. Now with Bitcoin, it is confirmed. For this to change, we would need to break this area. So we need to break these highs, these lower highs, and then get a move to the upside to get a confirmed bullish trend again. So that is pretty much what I'm looking at for Bitcoin. I would keep an eye on the nature of the market as it progresses, and just always keep in mind that the market is unregulated. Tether is still involved, Bitfinex is still involved, so you're going to have money being trying to pumped in, and so just be careful not to lose your shirt and everything with how that goes. But that is what I would look for in Bitcoin. So if you look at XRP is interesting because it, in a way, I think is a little bit more clear for the rejection and the drop, if you look at it in hindsight anyways. So we get impulse, descending nature correction, impulse, you get this more of a triangle pattern, and then although we get the impulse, it just turns corrective. Okay, so when we break those lows, we break it impulsively, but we immediately retrace and form another correction. When you see those corrections right on top of each other, it can indicate slowing momentum. When you see this, then you're looking for the opportunity to buy and move the upside. And that's the reason why I bought XRP. You look at this, we almost get the rejection from this double top. It's really close. To see that on the daily is a good indication of downside. Again, I'm not always paying attention to these things because I'm not trading crypto right now. If you look at what happened here, the corrections were decent corrections. You get a nice flag on the hourly. You get a pennant on the hourly here. And then this could be considered a flag, but you have a lot more wiki. Almost 80% of that pattern is wicks. So again, you're looking at this as exhaustion. We do have high test wick, a little lower high test wick, but it's also a doji there. But the pattern is full. It's filled. This is almost all wicks. So that type of thing you want to be careful with. Yeah, just something to keep an eye on when you're trading. You want to know that would reverse just based on that, but it's something to keep an eye on. When we do reverse, it gets very sloppy. So we're not seeing those same clear flags to the downside. You could see that as a flag, and it does play out as a small flag, but it immediately turns into a correction which moves to the downside correctively. And when you see this, it's just, I wouldn't be taking any kind of trades in those areas. So I would be leaving this, because any time that type of descending pattern can move to the upside. So I would not be trading that kind of move. It doesn't move to the upside. It begins to impulse again. It forms a correction, and then it impulses down. So all this nature was just trickle down. And then we form, it depends on how you look at it. You could look at this as a pennant, like that, the last part of it. Or it could develop out into a larger flag if we get that touch and move lower. But again, it's going to follow Bitcoin to some degree. And that is why it dropped off here, was because of Bitcoin. And how I would look at this last part right now is more so as that being the correction, this being another impulse, and then correcting again. The reason why is because that seems to fit. If you look at it, this fulfills this. And when you see those, it generally means, again, that we're looking at indecision or possible exhaustion. Then you see these wicks, keeps trying to test the bottom, trying to break lower, but it cannot break this. So every time those wicks move down, they get rejected and we move off. I'm not saying it can't come down lower, but I'm just saying when you see that, it is an indication of exhaustion and probably, potentially, a move up to alleviate that exhaustion. Or what can happen is you can just continue to kind of move correctively out, and you can do that type of thing. So again, with Bitcoin, if you're going to look for an entry, Bitcoin right now, I think this last part is a little clearer than on XRP. But if you're going to look for an entry, you would have to set a break entry. If you're going to enter here, it's a little bit more risky, a break of that triangle. But again, look to the key areas, look to the ray line, the trend line, these areas for rejects. Even if the wick goes through it, pierces it, if you get a good rejection wick and you have other good entry criteria, maybe an RSI divergence or something like that, it can play into that, and it would be a good something to look at as well. One last thing before we close out the video, I want to talk about numbers. It's a little bit interesting with Bitcoin. It is true of all markets. The markets move by numbers and mathematics, and it's very intricate. And if you're a mathematical genius, you could actually study the markets and trade based on math. It is possible, and there are some methods based on it. It's not my thing, but purely for the enjoyment and the interesting intrigue, I do study it a little bit. But Bitcoin moves, I think, even more profoundly based on numbers, to the point of, I would say, almost like it is controlled, which I do believe it is. I'm not going to go through all these, but these are all points that I picked, and I didn't look at every candle. These are just points I'm moving through the crosshair and looking where we are hitting even numbers. And they're not just even numbers, they're all the way down to the cents. So let's just quickly, we're going to go through these. We're not going to go through all of them, but if you look at the top of the screen, shows the open, the high, and the low and the close. You notice the low is 10,370. You look at another here, the low is 11,811 even cents. The high here is 13,880. The closing is 13,805. You have a low here of 10,577 and a low here of 9,950, a closing of 10,351, a high of 10,351. These are all even numbers, and that is 9,713 even cents. And you'll see at these pivot points, the very top, it's an even number at the very top, even number. These long wicks where, in my opinion, Tether is boosting the market. You have these big rejections. They're even numbers. They're putting in fake buys, in my opinion, at those numbers and pushing the price up. Big wicks, even number, even number, even number. Low here, even number, it pushes off. You have 9,092 at this top here. You have 10,642, a high of 11,120. We're not going to go through all these, but you can see through on the chart, the top here is 12,325 is the high. You'll see a bunch there. I didn't check through there. And then here at the end. What's interesting is all the way down as we're trickling, normally a descending channel, a descending pattern would normally break the upside. Sometimes they'll trickle out. But if you look at this, all these even numbers right on top of each other just doesn't make sense unless somebody propping the market up is really sloppy and just using even buys, even numbers to prop at, to stop it from selling. You'll notice this here, the low, both even numbers. If you break it down to the pattern we're in here now, tons and tons and tons of them. There's 8,600. There's 79.98. The closing is 83.69. The high is 8,700. Down to the cents, closing 8,650, 8,696, and as we're breaking down, 8,420, 8,461, long wick 8,050. Those long wicks tend to be not only even but down to the tenths, the hundreds and the tenth dollars. This last one here is 7,866, 7,941. So it's my opinion that, you know, there is math and it does play out. There's pivot points that based on math, it makes sense to me from a mathematical perspective. But to have this many on top of each other, especially piling up within a couple of days, just doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem to be realistic. So I'll leave you with that. You can do some of your own study and figure out what you want to make of that. But I find it very interesting. If you go through the chart, I think you'll find it interesting, and maybe you'll find a way to trade based on it. But regardless, have a great week, guys. I will see you Monday with a video on the Forex breakdown, what we're looking at for the week to come. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new here. And check out the course. The link is in the description if you're interested in learning to trade Forex or cryptocurrency for a living. Comment below and let me know what you thought of the video and what you'd like to see in the future. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great one.